IndyCar's representation on television has always been pretty strange. From Ray Harroun and AJ Foyt appearing on I've Got a Secret back in the 60s, to Jimmy Fallon vomiting in a car with Marco Andretti back in 2012. It's fair to say that there is a bizarre rabbit hole of IndyCar-related media on television. A rabbit hole that I've bravely sent myself down over the past few months. From future IndyCar drivers appearing on game shows, to a champion playing a criminal on a cop show back in the 80s, here today is just a smattering of stories from the weird IndyCar TV rabbit hole. So we're going to start off in pretty normal territory, but as this video progresses, things are going to get strange and really obscure pretty quick. Probably the most remembered IndyCar TV crossover was Helio Castroneves competing on Dancing with the Stars, which is a bit of a running joke in IndyCar circles to this day. Helio appeared on season 5 of the show in 2007, partnered with Julianne Howe. They made it through to the finale and won the season, beating out a duo that featured Mel B from the Spice Girls. Helio, who at that point in time was only a 2-time Indy 500 winner, was given a glass of milk to celebrate his victory, something that must have royally confused a vast majority of the viewers that have no idea what the Indy 500 is. Helio actually came back to the show 5 years later in 2012, where in that year's All-Star season he was a 4th couple eliminated. Helio wasn't even the last IndyCar driver to go on Dancing with the Stars, as in 2016 James Hinchcliffe went on as a contestant and finished 2nd in the show's 23rd season. Hinchcliffe was the last IndyCar driver to appear on the show, with the last racing driver period appearing on the show being Frankie Muniz in season 25, albeit he's probably more renowned as being an actor rather than a racing driver, but hey, he runs a NASCAR at this point, so I'm gonna count him anyways. You know, on the subject of Dancing with the Stars, here is an absolutely terrible question. Of all the drivers currently on the IndyCar grid, which one do you think is the most likely to appear on Dancing with the Stars? Actually, no, I should probably rephrase that question. Which driver would have to be bribed the least amount of money to appear on Dancing with the Stars voluntarily? See, this right here is a hard-hitting motorsports discussion that you don't get anywhere else. I can't even say that with a straight face. Anyways, when it comes to reality game showy competition shows, a landmine of IndyCar drivers can be found on American Ninja Warrior. Helio Castroneves, Tony Kanaan, and Joseph Newgarden all appeared during Season 8 of the show during the qualifying event in Indianapolis. Connor Daly then appeared the next season, with Scott Dixon appearing the season after that. None of the drivers that appeared on the show ever completed the course, and after Dixon's appearance, no driver has ever returned to American Ninja Warrior. IndyCar around that same point in time also had 5 of their drivers make their way onto Celebrity Family Feud in the summer of 2016. On the show were the usual suspects, Helio Castroneves, Tony Kanaan, James Hinchcliffe, and Connor Daly. But along with those 4 was an odd choice, Will Power. I mean, it makes sense considering he had won the IndyCar Championship just 2 years prior, but at the same time Will appearing on Celebrity Family Feud is a little bit out of character for him. There's honestly not much more to it than that, and it certainly can't hold a candle to the IndyCar game show story we'll be talking about later on in this video. Here's another story from a game show, one that people may remember from about 6 years ago. During the 30th season of The Amazing Race on CBS, Alexander Rossi and Connor Daly appeared on the show as teammates. The two put on a strong showing, getting eliminated in Hong Kong to finish 4th, winning 4 legs of the race in the process. I still remember how big of a deal this was in IndyCar spheres back in late 2017 when the show was being filmed. It may have been forgotten by some though, however I am not one of those people. Speaking of forgotten, the legend AJ Foyt certainly isn't forgotten, unlike his grandson AJ Foyt IV. AJ IV isn't really remembered for what happened on track, let alone the stuff he did off it. AJ IV had a very short-lived movie career, having a very minor role in the 2005 movie adaptation of The Dukes of Hazzard. The movie was panned by critics, being described by viewers as a quote, lame-brained, outdated wheeze. In fairness, Foyt's time in IndyCar didn't fare much better, but hey, that's a subject for another day. I am now running at full speed into a minefield as we hop back to the world of reality TV again. This time with the Andrettis appearing on future President Donald Trump's show Celebrity Apprentice. All of them made cameos during season 12 of the show, which aired in early 2012. Originally, Marco Andretti was meant to be one of the contestants that season, but withdrew from the show as filming was set to begin the week after the tragedy at the 2011 IndyCar race at Las Vegas. His father Michael stepped in, but was fired 4 episodes into the season. Then, in the season 12 finale, Marco was there filling in for his dad who was unable to attend, while his grandfather Mario was there to give Trump a ride to the studio in a 2-seater IndyCar. And with that story out of the way, I now start praying to whatever divine Andy there is out there that the comments section on this video doesn't turn into a post-apocalyptic political hellscape. Really, if you want to talk about politics, doing it in the comments section of a 19-year-old YouTube video is not the place to do that. With that warning out of the way, I will now swiftly and abruptly move on. Okay, so maybe I'm just boring, but as a kid I absolutely adored the show Mythbusters. To this day, I still love watching reruns of the show. And funnily enough, there were a few crossovers of the show and the world of IndyCar. The main of these was the Season 14, Episode 4 IndyCar Special, which was filmed at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and went to air on May 22nd, 2013. In that episode, they even had a cameo from Ryan Briscoe, which was actually a little bit awkward. You see, at the time of the episode's creation, Briscoe was a driver for Penske, but by the time the episode actually went to air, Briscoe had left Penske and joined Ganassi. I mean, I can't really blame the show for that, but it's still a little bit awkward. Now, I would like to show you footage from this episode, however, as it turns out, Discovery Channel is very militant in their copyright enforcement. But what I can say is that if you'd like to see tidbits of the episode, they are available on YouTube, and the whole episode is available on HBO Max and Discovery Plus. Now this next segment could really be its own video. It's the incomplete history of IndyCar drivers appearing on late-night television. There is a whole lot of history here, and much of it's pretty strange. Here's a quick rundown. Now the biggest goldmine when it comes to stuff like this is obviously David Letterman. It makes sense too, considering he's a current IndyCar team owner and a massive IndyCar fan. I mean, hell, only 1 week after he retired from The Late Show in 2015, ending a 33-year run on late-night television, he went to the Indy 500. And it should also be noted that his first ever appearance on network television was as a reporter at the Indy 500 back in 1971. That was years before he ever appeared on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, 9 years before his morning show premiered back in 1980, and 11 years before Late Night with David Letterman premiered. So considering Letterman's expansive history with both the Indy 500 and IndyCar as a whole, it shouldn't be a shock at all that a lot of drivers have appeared on the show over the years. Nigel Mansell went on twice, first in early 1993 towards the end of Letterman's run on Late Night on NBC, and then about a year later on The Late Show on CBS. Another Brit went on the show twice, that being Dan Weldon in 2005 and 2011. Along with that, Dario Franchitti also went on the show back in 2010 off the back of his second Indy 500 win. Franchitti's teammate Scott Dixon went on in 2013 after winning the IndyCar Championship, and earlier on that year, Franchitti's eventual replacement Tony Kanaan went on the show after his Indy 500 win. Sebastian Bourdais, in the midst of his Champ Car dominance, went on the show in 2007, and with him on that visit was a certain Paul Newman. Danica Patrick went on the show the same year as well. And last but certainly not least, we have Letterman's future business partner and longtime friend, that being Bobby Rahal, who appeared on Late Night back in 1992. Despite that list being very expansive, I probably missed out on at least somebody, but as it turns out, coming through a 33-year-long run on late-night television to look for a select amount of individuals is somewhat difficult. What about the show that came on after Letterman, some of you are probably asking? Well, when it comes to The Late Late Show, there's not a whole lot to find. Tony Kanaan went on The Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson back in 2014, which is actually a really entertaining interview. They just talk about the seatbelt crushing his testicles for the first 2.5 minutes. Now, Craig Ferguson, being a Scot, also had fellow Scot Dario Franchitti on multiple occasions, albeit one of those times being during his NASCAR misadventures in 2008. Besides that though, to my knowledge, no other IndyCar drivers ever appeared on The Late Late Show, which has now gone the way of the dodo bird. And finally, when it comes to the IndyCar late night dance, we have the multitude of stories surrounding IndyCar, Jimmy Fallon, and the Andretti family. A trifecta of things I never thought I'd have in one single sentence on a video script of mine. Starting way back in 2012 during Jimmy's run on Late Night, there's an odd skit in which Jimmy sang a song about kidnapping Bob Costas, ending up at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and then being challenged to a drag race with Marco Andretti. I swear on my mother's grave, I am not making this up. This is an actual skit that appeared on the show back in 2012. I have watched it on multiple occasions and I still cannot wrap my head around what happened over those 4 minutes. Then in 2019, Marco along with Mario and Michael went on The Tonight Show together to talk about the Indy 500. The last IndyCar guest to appear on the show was Jimmy Johnson in 2022, who actually revealed his helmet for the Indy 500 while on the show. There was also another IndyCar-themed skit that appeared on The Tonight Show a few years ago called IndyCar Superlatives. This skit is just as much of a fever dream as the Bob Costas kidnapping plot from earlier, as he just spent the whole skit playing with his hair and faking a British accent. It was very bizarre to watch, and I say was because I think the whole skit has been entirely removed off of The Tonight Show YouTube channel. See, people watch that and then wonder why IndyCar is switching to Fox. Alrighty, so with that out of the way, we can finally get out of the realm of late night television and move into the really bizarre stuff. As if the stuff we haven't been talking about so far isn't weird enough. Back a few minutes ago, I mentioned a weird IndyCar game show story, which is also one of the weirdest stories in this video. It's January 2nd, 1985, and on the 332nd episode of the game show Press Your Luck, a soon-to-be familiar face is in the middle. His name is Sam, he's 30 years old, and he's on the show to help raise some money to help out his racing aspirations. Things would work out pretty good for him, as he pulled off a multi-day winning streak which netted him $16,350. He would put this money to very good use, as the man in question was future IndyCar race winner and IndyCar team owner Sam Schmidt. Next up, I'd like to talk about a show that me and maybe 2 other people remember. True TV's Kart Life was a one-and-done show that has justifiably been forgotten about over the past few years. Following the lives of families in the world of karting, it gave an in-depth look into the side of motorsports that people think is a lot cheaper than it really is. As a 10-year-old kid watching this show who used to drive a top kart, I naturally gravitated towards another top kart driver they had on the show, that being an at the time 14-year-old David Malukas. It's a pretty good look into the early career of a current IndyCar driver, and also showed David's first ever time in a single-seater race car during that season. Episodes of the show are available on Amazon Prime, but outside of that, the show's been understandably scrubbed from the internet. The show was met with mixed reviews, and even in karting circles to this day, it's still seen as a bit of a running joke. But being disliked and above a joke is not something that can be said about the final 2 shows we'll be talking about in this video. CSI Miami is a pretty beloved show, and during their 2nd season, they had an IndyCar crossover. The season's 7th episode, titled Grand Prix, featured the story of a pit crew member dying in a fire that broke out in the pits. Filming for the episode took place during the weekend of the 2003 Grand Prix Americas from that year's Champ Car season, and strangely enough, they didn't even use a fake team as being the one involved in the plotline. Instead, the number 12 American Team Spirit Johansson team was at the epicenter of the episode, with the team's car, hauler, and likeness being shown throughout the episode. Even though the show is very clearly fictional, that had to have been some pretty bad PR for the team. Honestly, it could very well be why the team folded at the end of the season. What makes this even more bizarre is the fact that it wasn't even the first Miami crime show to use IndyCar as a creative throughline. And the worst part is, it wasn't even the most outlandish storyline either. Taking the top honors as the weirdest piece of IndyCar-related TV media is the story of Florence, Italy. No, not the city Florence, Italy, that just happened to be the name of the 17th episode of Season 2 of Miami Vice. Centered around the Miami Grand Prix, Crockett and Tubbs are left to investigate the scummy underbelly of the racing world. Danny Tepper, played by reigning Indy 500 winner Danny Sullivan, is the lead suspect in the murder of a 17-year-old prostitute who is beaten to death and then thrown out of a moving car. Danny is constantly grilled by the two, with Danny's father Frank Tepper attempting to get the duo off his son's back. But as it turns out, Frank was a killer the whole time, and while Danny wins the race, Frank embroils himself in a police chase which ends in his death after he intentionally crashed his car into a building at high speed. So just disregarding the absolute insanity of an Indy 500 winner playing the role of someone suspected of murdering a 17-year-old prostitute, there's a teeny tiny bit of irony considering the setting. The episode was filmed in the IMSA paddock during the 80s. And now for those who may be unfamiliar with the history of sports car racing and just racing generally back in the 80s, have it be known that IMSA in the 80s was pretty much entirely flooded with drug money. The series was informally called the International Marijuana Smugglers Association for a very good reason. So with that being said, the fact that Miami Vice was filmed at a race funded with weed money is absolutely hilarious. And that context, coupled with the storyline surrounding the episode, makes that the weirdest piece of IndyCar-related TV media that I could find. And in my humble opinion, is possibly the strangest piece of IndyCar-related TV media that will ever be made. So when I said at the very start of this video that we were going down a rabbit hole, I absolutely meant it. We definitely went pretty far down though, and I hope you enjoyed this strange look into some strange history. If there's any other bizarre IndyCar TV stories that you're aware of, please let me know in the comments section because I would love to hear some of the stories that are out there that I somehow missed. Thank you all for watching and have a great afternoon.